Call the meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Soulsby. Counselor Savage.
Here.
Counselor Fleck.
Here.
Counselor Stennett.
Here.
Counselor Irvin.
Here.
Counselor Roberts.
Here.
Mayor Gowing.
Here. Okay, item 3, there's no items to be added. Brings us to item 4, appearances of interested citizens for items not on the agenda. This is the time for citizens to comment on items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by presiding officer, provide their name and address, and will be allowed up to 5 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for public hearing may be provided only in that hearing. Comments on agenda items may be taken to prior to council's discussion on that item. Council will not engage in any discussion or make any decision based on public comment at this time. However, the council may take the comments under advisement for discussion and action at a further council meeting. Okay, so I have online Joanna Z.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yep, just a minute. So my name is Johanna Z, and I reside at 316 Quincy Avenue. On January 24th, at the last council city meeting, information was provided about the crumbling of the narrative and the dangers of the so-called vaccine the city of Cottage Grove has been promoting. You were warned that to do so was a violation of the many constitutions, the Nuremberg Code, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and you were put on notice at that time. We reached out to you with information and links, and assurances were given by one of you that you would watch the material seen, and yet no response. On February 3rd, several of you were served with a cease and desist declaration and a notice of liability, which was documented by video and legally binding. For those who were not available, your documents were served by certified mail. And for those who refused to pick up your mail, dishonoring the people of Cottage Grove, you received an email copy. All of you received digital copies of the pages of the links provided. And yet not one of you have responded. You persisted to promote and offer more clinics and lie about the actions of peaceful protesters in order to stir up counter-protesters. If we wanted to block people's access, we have 5 pharmacies here in town that we could choose to do so. You have yet to correct your lies to the public, leaving some with the impression we are a Wild West group of gun-toting anti-vax bandits. And then perpetuated by the corporate-owned media, a few members of the public came to save the day, balloons and all, calling it a life celebration. Might I remind you that a life celebration usually happens just before you die. So on February 4th and 5th, you went to great lengths to provide safe access to these drive-through clinics where people participated in a medical experiment. A great leader once said, "There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him it is right." Thank you, Martin Luther King Jr. American jurisprudence tells us that no law, regulation, rule, recommendation can supersede the Constitution. And yet here we are, right? Keeping healthcare, education, and basic necessities from the people of Cottage Grove, unless they comply with these unjust laws. Even taking away jobs from hundreds of people, and you all just sat there. A tsunami is coming. Millions are protesting around the world. Lawsuits are abundant. Criminal complaints have been filed in every state attorney general's office, as well as federal, along with many county prosecutors' offices. You have all been tagged now. Your names are on file. If you cannot stand up for the supreme law of the land, which is our U.S. Constitution, and with the people, then you need to step down. People should not be afraid to come forward and speak their truth. People should not be afraid to enter a hospital for fear that the staff will kill them. Doctors should not be afraid to prescribe medicine that heals. Censorship and attempts at public shaming and mocking, such as what we saw at the last meeting, are unconscionable in a free society. You do not have the authority over us, breaking your own rules, at the same time pushing tyrannical ones on us. Your rules that you just read out said there will not be any discussion on these comments, and yet last time there certainly was discussion and attempts to publicly shame and mock those who spoke up. So when tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty, and that one I thank Thomas Jefferson for. So it is with empathy, compassion, and truth that we are performing our duty, and we're not going away. You know, we do this not just for ourselves. We're not selfish, but we're doing this for all of us, whether you can see that or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Myers?
I'm going to lay out all my W-2s for this year alone. You can see them. My tax consultant loves me. My name is Sarah Myers. I reside at 125 Gateway Boulevard. I have lived in Cottage Grove, Oregon for 42 years and have been part of the healthcare system for the last 24 years. I've had the privilege to be employed by or privately hired by individuals in each of the assisted living facilities in Cottage Grove and in their homes. I've assisted elders with their basic daily living, physical therapy, wound care, and I've held the hands of many and cried many, many tears while your loved ones have passed away. Throughout the years, I have also been employed and volunteered at every single school in Cottage Grove. I've fed your children, I've played with them on the playground, I've taught your children to count, and I've listened to them pour their hearts out when they've had bad days. These have not just been jobs for me. They have been countless hours of my life loving the people in this town and absorbing all these moments with these individuals. They've helped me grow as a person, and they've left me with many life's lessons that you wouldn't learn from just any job. Throughout the years, I've become more knowledgeable in my profession, and it's in turn was making a decent livable wage as a single parent of 3 children, and I think that's pretty good. But over the last 2 years, I went from pulling double shifts with no weekends in sight due to people being afraid to work or due to them being sick. When you couldn't see your family members, I stepped in and loved them for you. When the mandates started falling into place, I was forced to choose between becoming the government's experiment or walking away from all that I knew. Now, 2 years later, 9 jobs later, I'm making minimum wage, stuffed into a small apartment, and facing discrimination on a daily basis. The 14th Amendment gives us due process. It guarantees us equal protection under the law. So why in the world are the unvaccinated being treated different than the vaccinated, and why are you so blind to it? While exercising my First Amendment right to free speech, I've had longtime residents of Cottage Grove yell in my face, spit in my face. I've been told to slit my own throat and to shoot myself in the head because of my vaccination status, and I've even had pretend ejaculate thrown at me. It's been great. You might as well put a noose around my neck and hang me from a tall tree, because this is time repeating itself. This is the new segregation, this is the new discrimination, and you're part of that. The Declaration of Independence says that everyone, by virtue of being a human being, has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if our government fails to protect the citizens have the right to revolt. We have the right to resist and an obligation and a duty to do so. The 10th Amendment says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states and reserved to the states respectively or to the people, which means that each state is free to make its own laws so long as they do not violate the Constitution and so long as the people of the state support them. The state and city's mandates violate the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. The Supreme Court has ruled the president's orders for companies to require all employees to be vaccinated to be unconstitutional and an overreach of power, and that should make it apply to the state and city level. It is also clear that these mandates do not have full support of the people. because you can see that many county sheriffs in Oregon have publicly stated that they will not enforce these mandates and they are unconstitutional. As far as the FEMA clinic, we were there to provide information to people entering the clinic so they could take one last moment to educate themselves. We were there exercising our right to free speech and to show others that it's okay to not fold to the pressure from society or your employers. We were there to show others that it's okay to think for yourself instead of doing as you're told. Mike Fleck, you wagged your finger at us. You said, how dare you try to stop people from getting this vaccine? That's what you said to us. And to Mike, I say to you, how dare you tell me that I need to allow someone to push something into my body that I clearly do not want inside of me? How dare you condone medical rape in order to be employed with a career that I gave my entire life to? And how dare all of you sit by and allow it to continue? I have MCP, this one, Goodwill Industries, this one, PRT, this one, Safeway, this one. Oh, that's a Southland Mental Health, Seniors with Disabilities, and Kids Northwest, working with children with disabilities, all down the drain because I don't have a vaccine that you insist I get, and that you say it's safe.
Casino intros.
My name is Athena Intros. I live at 125 Gateway Boulevard. I'm reading on behalf of James Hardwick, who can't attend because of medical issues. I am James Hardwick, and I lived in Cottage Grove for over 20 years. On March 28th, 2021, I received the Pfizer shot and got the second Pfizer shot on August 27th, 2021, with a clean bill of health, both at McCoy's Pharmacy in Cottage Grove. Shortly after, I had a stroke. Now I rely on family and friends, and I use a scooter to get around. I was a healthy, active member of Cottage Grove until this happened.
Bill Christensen.
Bill Christensen, 1337 Elm Avenue, Cottage Grove, Oregon. I wanted to come here tonight, Mayor and City Council. This is the flag that flies in front of our house every single day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The only time this flag is ever taken down is when it's so faded that it's time for a new flag. And as you can see, this flag is a little faded, a little tattered, kind of like us, not perfect, kind of like America, not perfect. Injustices have been done in this country, and I'm well aware of it. I study American history, and I'm well aware of injustices. But I think as Americans, I can say that we're trying to get it right. And I would encourage, I noticed in the City Council building here, in the chambers, there's a beautiful American flag. There's a plaque right below where the mayor sits that says, I think it says All American City. All American City. And it's got the stars and stripes. I do want to thank Mike Fleck last time after the meeting for listening to us. I really appreciated that. That told me something about Mike Fleck. And I'm standing here today asking the City Council if they could start each City Council meeting reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I know that you people love America. You may not think it's a perfect world, it's a perfect country. I don't either. But I would encourage you to find a way to say the Pledge of Allegiance before each City Council meeting. Just like America, we're trying to get it right. And I think by doing that, you can get it right. Thank you very much.
Before I call the next person, I just want to respond to that really quick. That we typically did when we went virtual, we stopped doing it. With as many people as in here tonight, I wanted to do it tonight, but we can't add it to the agenda without prior, so that's why I wouldn't. Monica Peppers. I have to get it through the whole adding to the agenda. We've already passed that item. Monica Peppers. Oh, sorry, Monique. I apologize. That's twice I've done it.
Members, I come before you tonight again to voice my concerns about the masking of we the people, as well as the forcing of experimental vaccines to keep jobs, enter stores, events, etc. We were told 2 weeks to slow the spread of COVID, and yet here we are, 2 years later. The simple truth is that the people making these policies don't care if they are effective or not. They only care that you obey them. Fauci's no mask, 1 mask, 2 masks, tap dance is much more than a firm science-based policy. It is, in fact, a control over our God-given rights to bodily autonomy. 2 years ago, we were told by the government that a vaccine would enable us to get back to normal. This has not happened. In fact, we're now looking at being required to take booster shots, in some cases, 3 to 4 times a year. For the record, I'm not anti-vax. I do, however, oppose mandatory injections, vaccine passports, mandatory masking, and track and trace apps. The government we have today are exactly who our founding fathers warned us about 200 years ago. Thankfully, those who care about freedom and state sovereignty are fighting every day. It's too bad that that doesn't apply to you. In closing, the Constitution, the rule of law, and the sovereignty of our states are too important for us to ever relinquish. We, the people, will never stop fighting for our God-given rights and our constitutional rights. What side of history will you be on?
Anna Secord.
Hello, my name is Anna Secord, and I live at 129 Quincy Avenue. I have been a resident of Cottage Grove my entire life. I just got done working 12 years in healthcare, and I'm here on behalf of my Uncle Bob today. His health has declined so much that he can't be here, but he wrote this. My name is Bob Fields, and I have been a resident of Cottage Grove since 1983. In March of 2021, I received the Johnson & Johnson shot at McCoy's Pharmacy. 1 week later, I was diagnosed with COVID and was admitted into Sacred Heart. I had very swollen legs and was told that there were many, many blood clots. Now, almost a year later, my breathing is still extremely labored and I'm exhausted by minimal movement.
Bonnie Sano.
My name is Bonnie Sano, and although I don't live within the city limits, my home is a Cottage Grove address. I am a retired RN. I'm speaking on behalf of my daughter, who is physically unable to be here this evening. The adverse conditions to the COVID-19 mandates are not only physical, medical, but some are financial, resulting in the loss of livelihood. That is the case with my daughter. She's a med tech. In the lab world, that's comparable to an RN in the nursing world. She worked for Peace Health for 20 plus years before COVID hit. She was highly skilled and a highly competent employee. When Peace Health decided to implement the mandate that all employees must be, quote, fully immunized with COVID injections in order to continue working for Peace Health. She has a couple of autoimmune conditions And because of religious objections, she chose not to take the injections. She is not an anti-vaxxer. She is an anti-mandate, freedom of choice person, as I am also. Because she chose not to accept the injections for religious reasons, she was both granted a religious exemption and placed on indefinite leave of absence in the same email. The result of Peace Health's actions was that she was effectively fired from her job for no other reason than that she chose not to be injected. She is still on the books as an employee, but cannot work there indefinitely for no other reason than that she would not subject herself to the COVID injections. Her job at Peace Health was her livelihood. She still has an open case with the EEOC. She had no patient contact. Because of the layout of the lab itself, she and her coworkers were already 6 feet or more apart from each other before COVID hit. She worked for over 18 months of the COVID pandemic without contracting or transmitting COVID. As a lab employee, she and her coworkers also wore masks, face shields, gloves, and lab coats on a daily basis. She was so conscientious regarding safety precautions, even outside of work, that she basically had no social life. The one trip that she took to visit her brother, she refused to take off the N95 mask that she was wearing, even to eat or drink, both during the flight and in the airport terminal. Is it ethical? Is it moral? Is it fair to lose your job just because you chose not to receive an injection you feel is not right for you? Shouldn't you have the right to make your own health decisions without losing your livelihood? And I know she's not alone. She felt very alone at first until she met the 200 plus other employees of Peace Health who were canned the same way she was. There has not been one employee at the time of her dismissal. There had not been one employee at Peace Health who had given COVID to a patient, not one. It's been touted that Sweden is an idealistic socialist country. In Sweden, they did not have lockdowns. In Sweden, they did not have mandates. In Sweden, they did not require masks or passports or other things like that. Our governor, I should say, I do not believe that the COVID mandates are saving lives. They are a mechanism of control. That is all. Our governor thought it was okay to not wear a mask in DC, and at the same time was mandating that our little kids who unlikely, it's very unlikely that a child in school will either contract COVID or transmit COVID. And yet they are mandated to have to wear masks all day long in school, if and when they get to go to school. I think this is very unfair. And I would hope that you, as the council of Cottage Grove, would stand up and say, no more in Cottage Grove. Do you know that even when the truckers
You need to wrap up. You need to wrap up. You've passed your 5 minutes.
Okay. Even when the truckers in Canada pressured governments to stop the mandates, Um, our government here in Oregon said, okay, well, at the end of March. But then they passed a law just before that that said that our governor could, just on a whim, enforce mandates again anytime she wanted to, and didn't have to renew them every 18 months. It's really very unfair, and we are really behind the times.
Maura Dewey.
Hello. My name is Maura Dewey. I live at 34478 Kaiser Creek Road, Cottage Grove. I'm here to urge all of you to start looking at and listening to information on all sides of this issue, on the issue of medical choice. Much to the shame of the journalism profession, only one side is being reported on. And that's the view endorsed by Big Pharma, corporatized medicine, and corrupt politics. But every day, more journalists and other media professionals decide to stop compromising their ethics. And they're stepping forward to denounce the censorship that we and other countries are experiencing. Every day, more scientists speak out about how they've been silent too long for fear of losing their jobs and their reputations. And they can no longer stay quiet. Doctors and scientists wouldn't lie, would they? Here's a passage from an article I read today. Big tobacco profited from killing people with a toxic, deadly product that promoted heart disease, lung cancer, and vascular disorders. For decades, they infiltrated the science industry and dominated medical journals and media coverage. Cigarette manufacturers advertised in magazines, on television, and at sporting events. They paid Hollywood scriptwriters to place cigarettes in movies and make them look cool. But they got caught faking the science, and they got prosecuted. Early treatment options for COVID have been suppressed. Information on vaccine side effects and deaths has been suppressed. The number of cases and deaths among the vaccinated has been distorted. The studies on the ineffectiveness of masks have been ignored. If you see nothing more than the mainstream media coverage and health agency propaganda, then you wouldn't even know this. Do you know this? It's incumbent upon you, the servants of the people, the servants of we the people, to inform yourselves of the many studies that show that immunity after having COVID is far superior to vaccination. Yes, it is. Read a few studies. Not that the CDC would tell you that.
There are no comments from the rest of the audience. That's what I'm shaking my head at. Thank you.
Okay. Do you know that the vaccinated carry a higher viral load than the unvaccinated? This has just come out. Higher viral load. They spread it more easily and more seriously than the unvaccinated. And do you know that utilizing vaccines during a pandemic, instead of as a preventive measure after the pandemic is over, is the primary cause of the viral mutations that occur? Do you know that? You need to be aware of these scientific reports. Once you've seen them and understood them, then and only then are you in a position to agree or disagree. And if you don't look into these things, then you are responsible for the carnage that has occurred and will continue to occur. Criminal prosecutions are already underway, which you also wouldn't know if your source of information is mainstream media, because they're not covering that. But they're coming out all over the globe, all over the United States. And we, the people, will hold you responsible, as will any higher power in which you might believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 5, there is no public hearings. Item 6, consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item 7, resolution ordinance. Ordinance amending the Title 14 Land Use District map. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. At the City Council meeting held on December 13th, 2021, Council adopted Ordinance 3150 annexing 1.511 acres into the City of Cottage Grove as a requirement of annexation per Section 18.04.090 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code. The property owner is required to apply for a zone change of the subject properties to redesignate the zoning from county to city zoning. Per subsection 14.47.400, number 1, the Planning Commission shall review and decide upon land use district map changes that do not involve comprehensive plan amendments through a Type 3 application procedure. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for ZC 2-21 on January 19th, 2022, voting 5-0 in favor of applying the comprehensive plan designation of C2P community commercial to the subject properties. As the Planning Commission does not have the ability to adopt an ordinance, Council is now being asked to ratify the Planning Commission's decision to approve ZC 2-21 by adopting the ordinance. This ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting, and staff is recommending adoption.
We have an ordinance number.
3156.
Councilor Fleck.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council adopt ordinance 3156.
Second.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, Mr. Mongren, on the map in the back. Is this just the bleed where part of the purple goes actually in to the Coast Fork? Do they have water rights? Is that what this is? On the
Mr.
map?
Mayor, Councilor Roberts, this deed or this property description, as it were, and is reflected in that drawing. It's hard to tell what the history is on that, to be honest with you. I don't believe necessarily, just because it does project into the Coast Fork, that it's associated with a water right, but that certainly could be the case.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, there are a number of properties along the Coast Fork of the Willamette that have property lines that go out into the middle of the river. Those are generally older properties that have that established.
Looks like it's been grandfathered over the years.
Any other questions, concerns? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Savage.
Aye.
Counselor Fleck.
Aye.
Counselor Stennett.
Aye.
Counselor Irvin.
Aye.
Counselor Roberts.
Aye.
Mayor Gowing.
Aye. Okay, ordinance 3156 passes. Brings us to item 8, business from the City Council. A is TMDL implementation plan background and progress update. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. The TMDL implementation plan for the City of Cottage Grove describes the strategies the city uses or intends to use in order to reduce the various forms of pollution in the Coast Fork subbasin of the Willamette River. The bodies of water included within the Coast Fork subbasin under the jurisdiction of the City of Cottage Grove include the Coast Fork Willamette, the Row River, and Silk Creek. The overarching goal of this implementation plan is to minimize or wherever possible eliminate the different types of pollution pollution contributions to surface waters within the jurisdictional control of the city of Cottage Grove. Our primary pollutant targets are bacteria, temperature, and mercury, although a combination of strategies including education and outreach, pollution prevention, hillside protection, riparian protection, erosion control, and stormwater planning and management. The city of Cottage Grove has made a commitment to work to reduce non-point source pollution through this TMDL implementation plan. Staff has updated the TMDL implementation matrix every 5 years as is required by DEQ since its adoption in 2008. Many of the strategies outlined in the current 2018 to 2023 matrix are continuations of ongoing projects that have proven successful over the last 13 years in addressing TMDL concerns. Examples include leaf pickup, riparian hillside development code enforcement, the Urban Forestry Committee and their tree planting efforts, our partnership with the Coast Fork Willamette Watershed Council, our new erosion prevention program, and others. Some, like our commitment to completing a low impact development stormwater manual and regulations, have remained as proposed since 2008 and are scheduled for completion in the summer of 2022. Staff has also been notified by DEQ that the city will need to amend its current TMDL implementation plan to include new criteria for mercury. That new criteria is attached to this memorandum by September 3rd of 2022. Staff is in the process of revising our existing draft low impact development manual and will return to council this summer for its consideration and hopeful adoption. Again, attached you'll find our current TMDL implementation plan, the latest implementation matrix, our annual progress report with responses, and our annual reporting acceptance letters with the new Mercury TMDL matrix. This is an informational only presentation. Do you have any questions?
You want to have any questions for Mr. Mongan? Councilor Fleck?
So, if I'm understanding, we've actually passed the changes for erosion control, and so we're actually just going to have to adopt the plan rather than actually some code. Does that sound like a fair assessment?
Mayor, Councilor Fleck, so what we will be with the new Mercury TMDLs and with our current adopted 2018 to 2023 implementation matrix, we had stated to DEQ that we would adopt what's called low impact development practices. DEQ has kind of honed that in a little bit more for us, stating that it should apply to all development in excess of half an acre, excuse me. So it would include new code language, likely in the same section of code as the erosion prevention program. An example of what LID is, for folks who are unfamiliar with that term, it would be things such as detention ponds, bioswales, permeable surfaces, and the like. As I stated, the requirement from DEQ is that it be for projects that are in excess of half an acre. So current projects that I'm sure most folks in attendance are familiar with, things like the Verizon store, that's just a quarter acre. Those would not require, those types of development would not require any on-site LID best management practices. Other projects, though, of course, that are going on would be like such as 540 Gateway or the Harrison Village apartments, where they're 2 acres and 3 acres respectively. Those would be required to have some on-site treatment facilities. So as I stated, staff will be kind of working to perfect our current draft plan that was put together by an intern some years ago. And then we'll bring to council in the summer for further discussion and hopeful adoption.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, brings us to item B, recommendations for crosswalk striping on East Main Street and Gateway Boulevard. Mr. Sisson. You're muted.
Got that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Good evening. In its September 28th, 2020 meeting, Council authorized city engineering staff to procure a traffic engineer's consultant services to assess whether adding crosswalk striping to specific street intersections would increase safety for pedestrians. Branch Engineering's initial report concluded there was not sufficient volume of pedestrian numbers during the winter months to recommend that a crosswalk be added. Therefore, Council directed staff to reassess the pedestrian volume of the crossings at Gateway Boulevard in East Main and 12th Street during the summertime. In their follow-up report last September 3rd, it concluded even with summertime counts that the number of pedestrian crossings at the intersection of East Main Street and 12th Street was not sufficiently high enough, more than 20 pedestrian trips per hour, to justify adding crosswalk striping. They used a national decision-making matrix typically used by traffic engineers to assess crosswalks. By the way, they also looked at Gateway Boulevard and strongly recommended no pedestrian crosswalk striping on that alignment, in that business corridor. But we're focusing on the intersection of 12th and East Main. So their recommendation was against adding striping because it didn't meet their criteria. However, they do note future counts of pedestrians may produce closer to the threshold volume of pedestrian crossings necessary to trigger a recommendation for a marked crosswalk from the NCHRP Report 562 methodology on East Main Street. So our recommendation is that Council consider painted crosswalks at both the east and west sides of the intersection at East Main Street and 12th Street.
Councilor Fleck.
Boy, Friday morning, I'd mentioned my concerns around this. So we're being presented with adding crosswalks that we've spent the money to do a study and they've said don't do them, and yet they're coming forth again. And it sounds like there's support to do that. So I guess my question then is, what liability does this city incur putting in crosswalks when the recommendation is against putting in those crosswalks?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Fleck. I'm going to hand the ball to City Manager Richard Myers. He took some time to refer that question to our insurance carrier.
Yeah, in visiting with our city attorney and the insurance company, it really doesn't create any additional liability. The reason being, there's already legal crossings there. It's an intersection, and so it's a legal crosswalk without marks. The marking, it does add that perception of safety because there's a crosswalk marked there now for pedestrians. But it also creates other elements of safety in reducing traffic flow or speeds or recognizing that there could be a crosswalk there. So based on that, they're saying, no, it doesn't increase any liability. It is a discretionary item. It's different than your stop signs because typically if you put a stop sign where it's not needed at all, people start ignoring it. They just go through it, and then that creates a different kind of liability. They just didn't see that and haven't seen anything that would create anything there.
Well, I'll just restate what I said Friday, is that if we were actually signalizing this intersection, I certainly would support this. I walk, as most of you know, all summer long, and I walk this stretch of road sometimes daily in the mornings and evenings, and it's too fast. I don't cross except at either Main Street or at 14th when it's busy, because the speed limit is 30 miles an hour in there. And to be honest, I don't feel comfortable stepping out, and I'm a pretty young, quick-moving guy. So I do not support this. I certainly understand the concerns of folks who may live in that area of walking up the 14th to cross, but until the recommendation is to do so from our consultants, I can't support this.
Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Mike. I also just can't see all the kids and the people I see in Coiner Park that run across Main Street to the Dairy Queen coming all the way down to the crosswalk to cross. I still think there'll be a lot of jaywalking and people just crossing out. I don't really think it's going to help much matters. Thank you, Mr. Miles.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I find conflict. I've seen that intersection just completely hopping when we're in the middle of Bohemia Mining Days, when we have the Earth Day party right there in Coinder Park. I can understand during the pandemic why it hasn't been 20 people in an hour. That makes a lot of sense. But I also am conflicted because 2 blocks later there's a light, and that has always seemed safer. I've always felt more comfortable doing that. And when I'm walking with my kids, I direct them to a light and a signal. I do not want them walking in a crosswalk that doesn't have a light and signal. So I'm conflicted on that part, but I'm going to err on the side of I'd rather have a light and a signal. And if there's not a light and a signal, I'd rather not have a crosswalk.
Councilor Stennett.
Mr. Mayor, if you wanted to comment first. Okay.
I do support it. I think that having a painted one at least direct people into a crosswalk. I've seen several times people coming out of Dairy Mart and cutting straight across the Coinder Park. And I go down that road a lot. And the only time I can do 30 is at 5:30 in the morning when I'm going to work. Other times I'm lucky if I can get up to 20 because it's so much traffic. So I'm not going to err on the side of the speed limit on there. What's there? I think that it would help awareness, visibility. People use that intersection a lot, so I do support it. You understand?
Yeah, thank you. I've supported this from the outset, and I've stated that there are many reasons to cross Main Street in that area, but no safe way to do it. I can understand a study that says that 20 people per hour aren't crossing there, but that is a great many people in that area, I think. I believe the numbers are coming and will only grow among people that are crossing there, though. I think we're putting in a lot of apartments on one side of that development. I think the only number that matters to me is 1, and that is the number of horrific accidents it would take to make us wish we'd put a crosswalk on. So I do support it.
Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question that comes up is how close to 20? I wasn't seeing, which I didn't reach to the level of 20 in the report, but do we have a sense? I don't know if it was in the September report or not. I get, and the reason why I would say that is because I also agree with Councilor Savage that we are in an anomalous time. And I agree with Councilor Stennett that we are growing. We're putting in developments on that I would think would increase traffic around that area and going across to Bohemia and the dog park and all the other bike path and everything. So I'm leaning towards supporting it. If it is a legal crosswalk, people can legally, cross there, and having some additional awareness that people might be crossing there might even prevent some aggravation on drivers' part that may assume that it's not a legal crosswalk. Just watching some drivers, if they think someone's doing something they're not supposed to, they're a little less safe around them, just to kind of make a point. And having a legal crosswalk there could add to, just that awareness that, oh, this is somewhere that's legal for people to cross. So I don't know if you have that data point on how close we were to that 20 or not.
Mayor, Councilor Irvin, I think the number was in the 14 to 16 range. I can easily say, and Mr. Haga, the engineer that we consulted, did say that the numbers, he could imagine them reaching the protocol after COVID. I think I would follow up on that and say that if the only time that this type of a change would occur is under powers of council, and it's an opportunity to increase visibility for the crosswalk. Most of our evenings are, in the fall and winter, early spring, or dark, And so I would just emphasize how the crosswalk striping would increase safety just from the aspect of increasing the visibility of that crossing. It's already a legal crossing. We would just be adding striping to it.
There's no more. Oh, Mr. Irvin or Councilor Irvin, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does this need a motion or direction?
I would
from the
entertain a
council?
motion. I was just getting ready to ask that.
I would move that we approve the city to stripe the intersection at East Main and 12th Street.
We have a second.
Second.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any more discussion? Councilor Savage?
I really appreciate this conversation that we've had tonight because I have to say, going into this, I did not feel like it was necessary. I'm still not sold that it's necessary, but I'm on board. So thank you for having this conversation. I appreciate it.
There's no more. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
So we have 4-2 in favor. Thank you. Good discussion. Concerns of council? Councilor Fleck.
Oh, what the heck, I might as well go first. So, boy, interesting conversations and interesting times. The biggest problem I see right now with the folks that are coming to the city council is, I think we're not communicating well in what the objection is. Our city has not mandated vaccines for their staff. We have not taken extreme measures as a community. What we are doing is following the guidance from the CDC, from the state, and we are doing what is mandated to us. Somebody had mentioned that states have the powers that the federal government doesn't preempt them from doing. Cities have the powers that aren't preempted from the state or the Fed. And so basically, we have chosen not to do anything beyond what the expectations are us. So I want to be very clear. My concern was not about the debate about the vaccines, right or wrong. My consternation was about the perception that a group of people were denying other citizens their rights under that Constitution. I've heard a lot of stuff about how we're violating rights. And absolutely, that is the very reason that upset me. Whether it's right or wrong, if somebody from out of the community did this, then it's on them. And I do want to thank the groups, both sides of the fence, that were out at the last vaccination clinic, because folks were very well behaved. And I really appreciate that. I want to say that I really do think that if we can have civil conversations, we may not agree. And clearly, when I came over on Saturday to talk, we're not going to agree, which is why I haven't called, because I think that at this point in time anyway, it would be an exercise in futility. And believe me, I am so busy right now, I just don't have the energy to do that. That being said, I will welcome any phone call. My phone number is on the webpage. I'm happy to give it to you. And I will sit and debate. I actually pulled up every one of your documents and I read them. I did not watch the videos in their entirety, so I will say I did not go through every piece of the information presented, but I did look at it. And I also looked at the sources, and I looked at what the guidance from our government is. And I have to tell you, I'm not convinced. And I'm sorry that we disagree, but I'm not convinced. So I guess what it comes down to is, as long as people are allowing others their right to choose, then I am not going to stand up here and point my finger at people. But let me tell you, my job up here is to protect the rights of all citizens. And that, I take very seriously and will do until I'm no longer sitting in this seat. Thank you.
Any others? Who? Councilor Irvin? Sorry. You're a little square tonight. It's hard to see.
Oh, I'm coming close. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things, just a report. I've sat on a couple of committee meetings since the last time we met. So the CWED board and the Lane Economic Committee, I can kind of squish them together because the topics were very similar, and they revolved primarily around funding sources and opportunities and discussion about what can be done in a number of different arenas as it relates to early childhood child care, not necessarily child education, but specific to early childhood care. We've had some pretty good conversations and points being brought up about how that relates to workforce housing and just general workforce availability. And I look forward to continuing that conversation, and it sparked some kind of offline conversations to that end. So hopefully there can be some, I say, cohesive vision coming out of that that would benefit this area. The second thing is I'd like to, hopefully anybody that is in the audience that spoke earlier, I know we have an executive session, but I'm happy to come down after we wrap up and adjourn and hear your concerns. I think sometimes things are a lot better understood in person and with a chance to talk. So if anybody would like to stay after, I'd like to come down and have a conversation. Thanks.
Thanks. Councilor Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it was amazing that we came together last Monday and we talked about folks who are unhoused. I think we came to a consensus that it's really hard to make that decision without talking to the folks who live in this situation. And something occurred to me over this past week as I've been milling this evening, those 2 hours in my head and pondering, trying to figure out how to help. And if I were to put myself in a situation where I was unhoused, I would not want that advertised. I would try and keep that on the down low. So if we are going to provide a scenario where folks can come visit with us and talk to us, I would like to provide two different opportunities. I love the idea of a town hall, and I think that that's fantastic. But if there's folks that don't want to be up front and center in a town hall, I would really like to see something a little bit more private so that we can actually hear some folks who want to talk, who don't want to be talking in front of the masses or in the big arena of the armory per se. So just food for thought. I think there's so many different perspectives on what to do, how to do, why to do. And we are such a unique group that we listen to each other. I'm really, really blessed and honored to work with all of you councilors and mayor and city manager. So I'm glad to have had that conversation and continue that conversation. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilor Blake.
So I'd just like to offer that when the warming shelter is activated, I am happy to include the council emails in those activation notices. And if folks want to come down and see how it's going and or talk with folks, I would certainly welcome that. Obviously, we need to respect rights and we can't have a quorum. So I would hope that folks would let me know if they were going to come by first, just so we can avoid any quorum issues. But I think that it is very enlightening and certainly would encourage anybody who's interested to come down.
Councilor Roberts.
Maybe before when the season ends, maybe we should all go down there and spend the night there and see what it's like. Yeah, I've been there. I think that would be a good reality check.
Well, I know a lot of people have left, but I see some have logged on, so that's a good thing. I'm really glad that they came in tonight and spoke. There's a lot of passion, a lot of emotions, and it was respectful, and that's what I appreciate. So I'm glad you guys came in and talked. And the other on homelessness, I had a meeting this afternoon with Mayor Ted Wheeler out of Portland, and I guess he's doing something. I heard there's something on the news. I never seen the news clip on it, but I had this meeting scheduled with him for a week or so. Since I'm the president of the Oregon Mayors Association, he's working with the association trying to get the mayors across the state to rally because he doesn't think the governor is doing enough to address homelessness. And one of the big pushes, well, the one is they're losing a lot of their vehicle pedestrian accidents are the homeless population that are getting hit. And the other is Washington and California are putting a lot of money into it. And I think our governor's put like 400,000 and the others are putting millions of dollars in it. So it needs to be done at the state level. We talked about this on our work session. The feds and the state have failed us in the homelessness. And so we need them to step up and do their job. And I'll keep you posted as that goes. So brings us to item 9, business from the city manager.
Just want to remind the council that on Thursday is a business after hours at the chamber office. You're all welcome to attend to that. And also to just point out the free webinar training that's available through Eugene Cascades and Coast to become a world champion host for the 2022 World Championships. It's a 7-part series of webinars that you can take, and it's going to teach you about all the wonderful things that are available in Lane County and around the area. So not only will you be able to tell other people about it, but you might find something that you might want to go do in Lane County that you didn't know was there. So I encourage you to go online and check that out and maybe do those. So when we have all these visitors here for the World Championships, we can help point them in directions. That's it.
Wow, that's your shortest one in a while. Okay, there's no city attorney tonight. No items removed from the consent agenda. Brings us to item 12, executive session. The City Council for Cottage Grove will now meet in executive session to consult with staff designated to negotiate real property transaction. Executive session will be held pursuant of RS 192.60E, which allows council to meet in executive session to deliberate with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transaction. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during an executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session, welcome the audience back in the room, and adjourn the meeting.